And I was like, oh, I have healing hands. And she was like, what does that mean? And I was like, oh, I can put my hands on you and it'll help you feel better. So I put my hands around her. But when I picked it up, like it was all bruised, but my handprint where it was not bruised. I was like,
Wow.
oh my gosh, do you see that? And she was like, that's so cool.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Aspen Roots podcast. And today we are so very honored and excited to welcome another member of the medical medium community, Robin Cheyney from Florida. Welcome, Robin.
Hello. Thank you. Great to be here.
And Robin does live healing events every month, sometimes twice a month, and they're low cost and they're a very accessible way to receive a healing and gauge how you respond to the light. And you can find her at her website at www.robinchaney.com.
So we joined one of Robin's group healings last week and we were blown away.
Oh, yay.
And I can tell you it was all really, really on point stuff and highly recommend it. Affordable, easy access. And
Yes.
we had a great experience. And we asked Robin to be on our podcast because we know she has divine guidance stories for days. And so when I reached out to her, she said that she got this intuitive hit that it would be valuable to share her story of when she started noticing the, what are we going to call it? The paranormal, the stuff on the other side of the veil, however you want to term it, the divine guidance as a child. And it was scary. It was fearful. And how she's been on this lifelong journey to where she's at now, somebody who's very in touch and connected and uses it for the light and uses it to help others. And so that is quite a journey full of many stories. And we're going to hear a bit about that from Robin today. So thanks for being here to tell us your story, Robin.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
We are too.
Yay. We are too, yeah.
So how did this all start? What's the beginning? How old were you?
Well, I was actually born this way, just like Lady Gaga, right? I came out of the womb in service.
Perfect.
Nice.
But I also came out of the womb very sick, too. I had shingles and Epstein-Barr. I was born with shingles. So I actually spent my first 2 birthdays in the hospital with a lot of stomach issues. Now I know it's shingles. And so I had a lot of illnesses as well growing up. So
sorry to hear that. I know it's a tough journey.
Thank you. The good and the bad, right?
Right.
And actually in utero, my mother had some accidents and somehow I survived. So I've had the angels with me since before birth. So, and it's been like that through my whole childhood. I don't know. I would just be saved. Like my brother pulled off my umbilical cord when I was 3 days old. And so that was tragic. And I've almost drowned. I've fallen off of things. I've almost burned to death. Like there's been a lot of things. Wow. So, and somehow I keep surviving. I think it's the angels keep interfering and like pulling me out.
Well, my heart goes out to you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
My heart goes out to you. And
Thank
speaking
you.
of the angels, my attention snapped to the timer on the recording of this episode at 444, which is an angelic number in my life. So confirmation there.
Yes.
I love it. And when you just said that, I looked at the time, it says 333. I don't know if that's a number for you.
It's a master number.
Nice.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll go back to the beginning. So I was really just kind of born with healing. Like people felt good around me. And from a very young age, I was doing this. I just didn't realize it. Nobody realized it. So they just said I had the magic touch, which was fun for me. I liked that. It started way long before I could form memories. But at the same time, the darkness was attacking, right? The darkness was attacking because if they attack you young and they get it into you, so you use your free will to choose not to serve your purpose, they win, right?
Right.
So they were always attacking my self-esteem, my self-worth, a lot of fear. I had a lot of fear. And we're actually taught to fear disembodied souls. We're taught to fear entities, right? Just as a culture. Yeah. Even though church says there's everlasting life, well, if there's a ghost, that's kind of proof like there's life after death, right? But then we're taught to fear it. So it's very kind of weird. And so I would have experiences. I think at the time we were going to a Christian church, and I would talk to the pastor or the minister because I think it would be outside of my mom's comprehension, right? So I would either be doing it for attention, I would be lying, it was all in my head, all those excuses that a lot of the kids get. And when really they're tapping in. They're tapping into the other side. They're tapping into entities. Like they're invisible friends. Like those are real. Those are real.
Yeah. I love that.
And when they're young, before that midline canal like closes, they have all that access to all that wonderful, all the fairies, all the angels, right? All those wonderful things that they have access to. And adults take it away from them, unfortunately, instead of leaning into it and letting them embrace it and really develop that beautiful intuition and connection to God. So it's very weird, right? Our culture is very weird. But when I was young, I was really scared of things. And I would, as I told y'all before, when I was young, I'd be going to sleep. And at the time, I would just have all these horrible thoughts as I was trying to sleep. And so I had a bunch of stuffed animals and I would put them around me. So it was just like my little face and then all these stuffed animals. Because I thought they wouldn't be able to see me. I'm in a bed. You know what I mean? I'm the only human. Of course, they're going to recognize me. But in my little 4-year-old brain, I was a stuffed animal.
I think that's brilliant.
Right? I do too. Yeah.
Camouflage.
Exactly. And I think I learned that from the movie E.T. because E.T. was like in with the animals in the closet.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Smart.
I thought
that's
that
cute.
was brilliant.
I like that. Oh, I love that. Did you feel like they're just beings in the room watching you and you felt, uncomfortable?
Yeah, to me, it was beings in the room and they were just projecting what happened to them. There were some of the entities or some of the souls, I call them souls, were the same over and over and over. Now I know they knew I could see them. They knew I knew they were there. And so they wanted help, right? They wanted help and they knew I could help them. I did not know I could help them. I didn't know anything except it was scary, right? Mm-hmm. They would also follow me and like I would feel watched. I would feel watched like all the time, mm-hmm. Especially at my grandmother's house. She had a lot of oil paintings with people's faces on there. And I would like the eyes follow you, right? They follow you and you walk through, or they did me.
Like
and
Harry
to me,
Potter.
they would follow me. Yeah. And to me, it was like Scooby-Doo. Like Scooby-Doo had those.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Oh, that's so funny.
Remember, like they'd flip the eyes and they'd be like, and then they could see through there. It was so funny. Anyway, I totally thought that was happening, but really it was the entities watching me. And I knew there were souls there. Like I could see, I don't like see them like I'm looking at you, but they like if they project, then I can see them in like my mind's eye. But then I also see a smudge of energy, like a physical like smudge of energy on most of them. So I knew there was like 5, 6, 7, depending on the day, standing there. And I mean, now I know they were like, oh my gosh, she can see us. Oh my gosh, she can see us. But they were so kind to me. Like they were just so kind to me.
That's good.
And I was just terrified because I was taught to be scared. Right?
Yeah. I had a similar experience when I was a child. I believe the souls lived in the basement. I don't know if there was one or many, but, slamming doors and then hearing footsteps walking down the steps and then just feeling watched. And so, yeah. I think a lot of people who have these gifts, that's kind of how it starts.
Yeah.
Usually when we're young.
And when this stuff happens, it can be scary. I think on a previous episode, we talked about a story from last summer where an entity in somebody else's house came into your body, Sophia, and tried to use your voice. And it was scary. And then our guides quickly reminded us that they're not here to harm you. They're just very attracted to your light. It's not this fearful thing that we think originally.
Yeah. Yeah. I just wish, like Robin's saying, that there was more education, our parents didn't know, but if we can kind of foster a new generation of there are these beings out there and how can we support our children if they're seeing them and experiencing things that maybe we can't see as adults or experience. So just to validate that whole childhood experience so it's not so scary because, it can definitely turn scary.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing on this podcast because there's also a lot of distortion. So there's a lot of unlearning involved in all this.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a great point. Both of y'all have great points. And yeah, to have that available to the children coming into the world now, that would be amazing to have that acceptance and have that education.
Totally.
That would
Yeah,
change.
totally.
So that would just change the world.
Well,
It would.
Now the angels can guide people to this episode, and then people can go to robincheyney.com and they have someone to talk to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or y'all. Definitely.
Right. Yep.
That can help them too.
So as you grew up, how did it progress? Did the abilities get more intense, or did your experiences get more intense? Or at what point were you able to kind of realize what was going on maybe a more mature level, I guess?
Or did you shut them down? Because that's another thing that happens.
Yes. I shut them down. Well, I was taught to shut myself down is what it was, right? Which shut them down. I shut it down to the best of my ability. There are some things you just can't shut down, right? Like if you have that gift, you can shut it down fully. But I would either ignore it, or I would rationalize it, or just push it away. So, which, as Brandon said, you have to unlearn all of that, which can be so hard because you put those blocks there and there, right? It's hard to clear those out, especially when you put them there, and it feels safe that they're there, right? You put them there because you're scared. So now this is safety, and now you have to feel unsafe when you uncover those and heal those. So it took a while. So it was very tough for me in that aspect, but I was so drawn to it at the same time. I would go into Barnes and Noble and go to the New Age section and just read. I would just want to be around those books. I just wanted to be around the books, the energy of the books. And then a show came on called John Edward, and he was a psychic medium.
I remember that.
And so I would watch him, and I was like, oh, okay. And he would say stuff, and I would identify with it. I was like, oh, it's okay. Like, that's okay. That's real. And then so that was kind of the opening of me starting to be more accepting of it. So everything that I had closed down, I was now starting to open.
Okay.
And
that's so beautiful.
Oh yeah. So John Edward, I don't know him, but he was really pivotal in me starting to accept things. So I'm really grateful to him. And then things came out like Ghost Hunters. Did you ever watch Ghost Hunters and Paranormal Activity and things like that? So I was so drawn to all of that. And so I watched Ghost Hunters, and I loved when they would prove that there was paranormal activity. I loved it. I thought it was so cool. But then I was like, it's kind of a novelty. They're using it as a novelty, and I wanted to help the soul. Like I wanted to, what does that soul need, right? So that started another quest. Because I'm a healer, right? Like I'm a healer. So of course I'm like, okay, what does this soul need? I mean, does it want to stay there? Does it want to communicate? They didn't really communicate a lot with them. They just said, oh, here's proof. And then they were done. They'd pack up and leave after like one night. Right. So I'm like, I thought that was weird. And I actually reached out a couple years ago, several years ago, I reached out to some of the local ghost hunter societies around me here in Florida. And I was trying to explain, I was like, I want to help the souls, and wherever I go, they're attracted, right? Because I can see them. And I was like, so you get a lot of evidence, but then I can also cross the soul or help the soul or whatever it needs to heal. And I was like, I will even do that after the show. You don't even have to film that part. You can just get the evidence, and then I can help. And yeah, nobody was interested in that. I was so disappointed. I was like, oh my gosh, we can help all these souls because there are so many haunted places around here. And a lot of the souls, especially like in the psychiatric hospitals and that are still there, like they're still taking on their humanness, right? And they're not human anymore. So you can help them release that so they can go home.
I have a question. Do you find a lot of the disembodied souls, do they still think they're alive?
Not all of them. There are some. Okay. There are some. I had
As you were saying, they still think they have their physical body, right?
Yeah.
In some cases.
Well, I had an autistic boy once, and he still took on the characteristics of being autistic, even though his body was dead. And we know autism from Anthony William is like heavy metals and the alloying of heavy metals and, just combinations of that. and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what he says.
Yes.
So when you lose your body and you have the soul, you might still have those fractures, right? So you still have some of those disbeliefs, those misbeliefs, so to speak. And he always was treated a certain way. He was nonverbal and he was aggressive. He actually came and he jumped on my back, like in my home. I keep my home clear. So if you come in, I'm going to know you're there like right away. So he just came in and he jumped on my back. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you got to get off. And I sent him away. And then my guides were like, he doesn't know. And I'm like, how does he not know? And they explained it to me. And I was like, okay. So I invited him back in and he acted just as foolish, right? So I'm like, you have to stop. So it's the first time I worked with one of those souls that was still believing he had human characteristics. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah.
So he was still sick, right? His body was sick and he still believes he was sick. So my guides just help him see that, oh, my body's gone. We can heal these fractures in the soul and he can go home to heaven. And so that's what happened. But again, it took me to like be a little more open because I don't play when the souls are here. I'm like, you're either ready or you're not, or, don't mess with me is the thing. Don't mess with my dog because I'm not going to help you if you do that. So my guides had to let me be a little more compassionate with the soul. And I was like, okay, so now I'm a little more compassionate, but I was still learning, right? And so I had really strict boundaries. And this one was the one that had to cross those boundaries so that I could open up to more compassion with the souls. And now I can work with much different souls than the ones who are just ready to cross. But it just took some counseling. It took about 2 or 3 hours of coaching him. And then he went to heaven, which was amazing.
Wow.
That's
and now
beautiful.
He's still in heaven.
Oh, I love that. I love that you're helping these souls. That's just such a beautiful thing. And I totally understand the boundaries. It seems like you have to have some boundary there with what you're going to allow and what you're not going to allow.
Yeah.
My guides talked me into it. So, but they know so much better than me. And they knew that I was ready. They knew that I was ready to start being more discerning on my own instead of just being in black and white with that. So that was their way of introducing me to a little more, upgrading me a little bit.
It sounds like you already had a compassionate heart if you're reaching out and trying to help these souls instead of just make a TV series on it for entertainment and proof. So you already were compassionate. I see that. And my other question is, when you say your guides, do you know exactly who your guides are, or you just have this like kind of vague sense that it's your guides and they're there?
Kind of both. There's a team that is with me. They aren't here at all times, but there's an essence of them there. So if I call them, they're here. Makes sense? I have a guide who's right here. I don't know if y'all can actually see him. He's always with me, with me. And he actually, when I need support, and I forget this, oh my gosh, I'm glad I'm remembering this right now. I have a little sign that I give him. And so he'll come closer and help me be more grounded. And we were talking about this earlier before we started recording. So, oh my gosh, I totally forgot that he does that for me.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So yeah, he's always here, but I'm so used to like that energy. Sometimes I forget he's here, but he's part of, if I say my guides, it's normally him. Cool. And it's also like my intuition. My intuition is I'm pretty intuitive. So fortunately. So like that comes into me as well.
Nice.
And like Sophia, I have all those clairs. So stuff comes in a lot of different ways. So and Anthony's told us about all these beautiful angels that we can call on by name because, oh my gosh, do I call on them every day, especially when I peeled back a new layer. And, Anthony talks about the physical layers, but there's also metaphysical layers, right? Spiritual layers that we have to heal. So it's work. It's work.
It's a lot of work.
Yes.
And I just want to jump in really briefly for anybody who's not familiar with medical medium. I stopped doing my every episode short introductions. Check out episode 10. But Anthony William is the medical medium. So when we say Anthony, we say medical medium, talking about the same person here. just to make that clear.
Yeah.
So you had talked earlier about closing down your abilities to sense all this stuff, and your journey back sounded by like your 30s, you were back. I'm curious, based on similar stories I've heard, how much did meditation play a role in bringing it all back?
Oh, meditation. This is interesting. When I was younger, and until I met medical medium, I couldn't meditate. I couldn't be quiet with myself because there were too many voices in my head, too much darkness telling me to do things in my head. So to meditate was scary to me. It was very scary. After I found medical medium and I started to heal, I was introduced to a woman named Eileen Crispell. And she's medical medium, but she also studied shamanism. And when I was referred to her, she helped me not be afraid of everything. And she helped me just kind of step into my purpose and my power to really embrace things because I was terrified. Bless her, she's been my Sherpa on this spiritual healing. So I was very fortunate to find her early on in my medical medium healing journey because she helped with the spiritual journey. But and we've talked about this before, and it's something that you're like, oh, you should tell this story. So shamans do something called a journey, a shamanic journey. And it's very similar to a meditation, but it's very interactive. Are y'all familiar with shamanic journeys?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I put on the drums and then I go. But when she taught me how to journey, y'all, I was terrified, absolutely terrified because I was scared of everything, right? I was scared to journey because she said, find a way to go down. And I literally thought she was trying to trap me in hell, like lock me in hell, get me to go to hell. And then she would lock me down there because I thought she worked for God and God hated me and he wanted me locked in hell. And that's how they were going to do it.
Wow, you've transformed some powerful main images of beliefs.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's a great point that I just want to highlight. I think a lot of people have that distortion where they think God hates them or, is out to get them or they deserve a certain level of suffering or punishment or whatever it is. And do you want to speak about how you realize that isn't true?
I tell you, I cross a lot of souls. I have crossed thousands and thousands and thousands of souls. I know who knew that there were so many. But now I just do group crossings. I don't do singles anymore. There are other people that can do singles, right, if they need more coaching. But I do group crossings. But before I started doing the group crossing, when I was doing singles, most of them didn't think they deserved it. They didn't deserve going to heaven. They didn't deserve God's love and acceptance and God's grace and his compassion. And so sometimes it would take hours to coach, to help them release all of that. And I used a lot of Anthony's words, medical medium's words, as earth is so hard. It's not your fault, right? And doing that, combining that with the light, I'm able to use light from heaven to help release as well. But they have to okay that light, right? Like if I'm facilitating light for them and they are scared of it, they're not going to take it. They're not going to use it,
Right.
So they have to allow that to come in, and the light will not go against free will for any reason. It will not. But there are so many souls, and they are taught this by their religions, by their cultures, and just living that God judges. God is terrifying, right? Your judgment day is coming, blah, blah, you know what I mean? And so they're terrified when their bodies die. They're scared. They're too scared. And they carry that guilt and they carry the shame and they carry the embarrassment with them. And their souls are so weighted down and they choose not to go to heaven. And so then they have to find somebody like me who can help them. But some of them take a long time to heal before they're able to be strong enough to go up and make that journey to heaven. So yeah, it starts here on earth. And unfortunately, it turns into a belief, right? Not just an opinion.
Yeah.
So it's really important to let them know, oh my gosh, God is Hilarious, right? He has a great sense of humor. So do the angels, and they're here to help, right? God always gives us something. He always gives us help. Whether we can see it or not, whether we accept it or not is on us. But there's always help. And there's always an opportunity. And it's just us learning how to see it and accept it and discern it, right? Which is good and which is bad, because evil is also always offering help, especially for people who have these kind of gifts that can help souls, right? Or that can help humans or dogs or pets, that they could just help the souls, right?
Right.
So whatever form they're in. And so they're always offering things as well. And it's easier to fall into that. And I did. I totally did for decades. Thank God. The grace of God, I have been able to heal and change. And now I work for Him. But yeah, it's a lot. And it affects the afterlife as well, unfortunately.
And that's the essence of your story here, how you've shifted that for yourself. And that's the most powerful point being made here today, because anybody can do that. It's an opportunity all of us have. So, you're doing this deep work with Eileen and just transforming some like huge belief systems, and you're in touch with your abilities. How did that transition into professional practitioner?
Oh, and I took the long road on this too, as I normally do. Well, first of all, when I found medical medium, I was like, I have to be a medical medium practitioner. I just have to do it. I could intuit, right? I could intuit. It would be helpful if I was looking at whatever the person's condition was and look at the list of supplements. The supplements would stand out what they needed to take, and then they would tell me how much they needed to take. So I thought I was going to be a medical medium practitioner. And I was so excited about that. So I was out there trying to do it, right? I was telling my friends everything, and they didn't care about medical medium, but it didn't matter.
Yeah.
I was still forcing it, right? So I talked to a couple of practitioners, because there weren't many practitioners back then. And they helped me start practicing on people, right? So I would get a couple of people here and there. And I was so excited because I could do it, And then I was like, oh, yes, I have healing hands. And I would lean into that. And anyway, I just got steered away from being a medical medium practitioner, even though I live a medical medium lifestyle. And I can give you information, but I'm a different kind of healer than that. That was just medical medium stuff. That's, you know what I mean? So now I'm broader. Or is it more broad? Anyway, I'm broader.
Yeah. I love that, because it was natural, and it was maybe even almost effortless. It just unfolded before you. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think when they were reminding me that, you're like, well, you have healing hands, right? So I wanted to touch everybody all the time, and which is hard in the medical medium community because we're so spaced out, right? There weren't anybody.
Yes.
There weren't medical medium people around me, because I live between Tampa and Orlando. So in a small town. So anyway, I didn't have anybody close, but I did have a friend. Oh my gosh. I did. There was a woman here who was also a shaman. And I thought it was so funny because I'd never met a shaman until I met two, within 2 or 3 years. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I never studied shamanism either, right? But I was trained by a shaman. So this woman's name is Karen. She is passed. Anyway, she was a shaman, and she came one day. She was on a motorcycle at a gas station getting gas, and she got hit by a car, and it rolled her motorcycle over, and she got injured. And
oh no,
I know, it was horrible. She was okay.
Okay.
She had to get her bike towed, and then she went to let me see if she's here. Karen. Yeah, she went to get checked out at an urgent care, but she didn't go to the hospital. Thank you very much. So after that, she came home, and she was my neighbor, and she told me that she had bruises all over her left side of her body. And this was so cool. I wish I would have taken pictures. And I was like, oh, I have healing hands. And she was like, what does that mean? And I was like, oh, I can put my hands on you and it'll help you feel better. So I put my hands around her. But when I picked it up, my handprint, like it was all bruised, but my handprint where it was not bruised. I was like,
wow.
oh my gosh, do you see that? And she was like, that's so cool. So I had to put my hands other places, right? And I really wish I would have taken pictures because that was so phenomenal. So the next time I get somebody who's bruised, I really want to do before and after. But that was
Very cool.
so cool.
I love that.
So anyway, right? So we became like friends-ish, but she would come over and visit, or if I was out walking my dog, I would say hi, blah, blah, blah. And we'd have a couple conversations here and there. So anyway, so she was like showing me some of her shamanic stuff, and she had this cool little blanket. Anyway, we became friends. Now, she got sick, pretty sick, very, very sick very quickly, and she went into hospice. And when she went into hospice, she knew what I did. Well, because then I was crossing souls over when trying to be a practitioner, right? So she knew I crossed souls over. So she's like, please don't come visit me.
Yeah.
Even though we were friends, she's like, please don't come visit me. I was like, I get it. Like, I understand because I can be scared for somebody who's literally at the end of, like, she didn't live much longer after that. So that would have been, oh, Robin's coming. She's going to help me cross, and she didn't want to cross.
Right.
So
okay.
Anyway, I totally understood that, but it just made me laugh. Now she laughs at it too. But one day I did. I went in session. When I say in session, that means I'm in a sacred space. I'm really in tune to everything around me. Like that's what I open a safe space and I go into session before I have a private consultation with somebody. And to me, like when you're in hospice, it's basically a slow overdose, right? Till they die. So she was getting a lot of morphine. And so it was to the point where she wasn't waking up. So I went to visit her and oh my gosh, this is so, y'all ready for this? Because this is a really cool story. Okay, so I'm sitting in this chair and she's in her bed, and all of a sudden, there are two things at her ears just go, shh, and I can hear them whispering, both of them at the same time in her ears. And these are not of the light. These are souls not of the light. So they have chosen, to serve in a different entity, right? Not God. So to me, they changed allegiance. So they looked weird. And I looked at them and I could see them. And well, like through my mind's eye, right? I saw the little smudge and I could see them very clearly in my mind. And I was like, stop that. And it's like they weren't even paying attention to me, right? Because they didn't expect me to be there. And I was like, stop that. I go, get away from her. And one of them looked at me and I was like, yeah, you get away from her. And it was really weird because it's like, oh, now we're spotted. Like I spotted them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so one starts coming towards me and trying to distract me while the other one is still just whispering in her ear, like incessantly. And it wasn't good stuff. It was more stuff like, and here, if you have any, this is what we were talking about earlier, Sophia, if you have any kind of doubt, they're playing on that on your deathbed or on her deathbed. They were playing on that. They were like, you're so selfish. You're so da-da-da-da-da. You didn't do this with your kids. You didn't do that, blah, blah, blah. And just all this stuff. Now, fortunately, she was a very strong-willed woman. So this one entity came over and it was like, have you ever seen the movie Chicago or the play Chicago?
No.
Yes.
So there's that court scene where Richard Gere starts tap dancing, right? And he's like doing the underhanded stuff as he's doing this tap dance. It was literally something like that, where this entity over here is trying to distract me with all this tap dancing and all this beautiful blah, 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 while the other one is over there like keeping her scared or trying to scare her, trying to make her feel that she's not worthy of going to heaven.
Wow.
And I'm like, I can't believe I'm seeing this. And I'm just like in this disbelief, like watching back and forth. And every time I would go back over to this one, the one that was like whispering in her ear, this one would try to stand in my way and pull my attention back over here. And I'm like, this is fascinating. Like fascinating.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So, well, I mean, you talk about spiritual warfare. It's like,
manipulative.
They're pulling out all the stops.
Yeah.
manipulative. Yeah.
So I was like, oh my gosh. So anyway, I'm like, you need to leave. And anyway, they did leave that night, right? I'm sure they came back as soon as I left, but I had to go home and go to sleep, yada, yada, yada. And the next time I went, and this is even more fascinating, heaven had shifted and they sent the light in. So the light came in together. She was pushing it back. She literally coned herself so the light couldn't get in. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, what is going on? I was so excited. The light's here for you to have, right?
Yeah.
This is your opportunity to go to heaven. And she was pushing it back. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is, those things that were like in her ear. So after I went home that night, she passed away the next day. The next day was her birthday.
Synchronistic.
She pushed the light. She pushed the light till her birthday. So she ended her life. So about 4, isn't that fascinating?
That's very fascinating.
Yes. Yeah. Very fascinating.
So about 4 hours before we got the call that she died, her soul had already left. Because there's different timing up there, right? So you can have a couple hours. And I didn't know this. Eileen had to teach me this. I was like, her soul came a couple hours before we got the call that she died. And so she explained like the timing is different. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes total sense. And the soul can also leave before the body completely dies, especially it's dying, right? Like it's basically dead anyway, right? So, all right, so she explained that to me and that made total sense. And I totally resonated with that. And Karen like acknowledged that as well. And she said, okay. So she was a nudist, right? And she had false teeth. And she had this big smile and a nakedness when she greeted me from heaven to let me know that she reached heaven.
Nice.
So I knew it was her. And this, right, actually. And then this is so amazing. The next week or something, I was watching the Game Show Network. And I can't remember one of the games, but it was a Karen who is a nudist. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Oh my gosh. I love it. Oh my goodness.
I was like, really? Are you kidding me, Karen? And I just saw this really big smile like in the ether, right? And I was like, that is so funny.
That is so funny.
And I'm like, you can't make this stuff up.
No,
like you just
no, you can't. Wow.
That was so funny to me. But Karen, wow, what an experience she gave me, right? In life and in death. And amazing.
Sounds like it. That's incredible.
Is amazing.
I've always been tapped into synchronicity around death, and I just see that at face value. So to have that story and get like a layer deeper where the light's coming, she moved it to her birthday. That's mind blowing to me. Yeah. That's new as well for me. That's cool.
Right. I'm with you. I'd never seen that before. And I was fascinated, but I was also terrified. Like, oh my gosh, is she not, am I going to have to cross her?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
It reminds me that, when I do group crossings or even just do single crossings, they usually come in and make themselves known over the next few days. This is one time it was really cool. I'm at a stoplight and there's a medical center to my left. And I'm sitting at the stoplight and I just look over at the medical center. They have this marquee sign and it says, welcome, Dr. Yada, 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 yada. And it was the same name as the person I'd crossed the night before. And I'm like, wow, that's so cool. And it was just that thank you, right? It was just that.
Yes.
This says thank you. And usually when I do group crossings, I get green lights. I get really good parking, like, just wonderful. Like they just do that for me, which is, it's a thank you to me. I take it as a thank you. And I just get little messages, right? And I just love them so much. But that was so cool. It was the exact name of the guy that I had crossed.
I love that.
Before. And I thought it was weird that I got stopped at a stoplight because I had done a crossing. And then I was like, okay, now I know why I got stopped at that stoplight. Because there's the name. And he just wanted to make himself known. So I was like, oh. And then you get the thank you, right? And they send that feeling of gratitude. And it's amazing.
That's awesome.
The stuff in the ethereal, it switches and changes so fast, but it always blows my mind that they can find a way in the physical to put you in a physical place next to a physical sign that says the physical name. Like, that is mind blowing to me and awesome. That's so awesome that happened.
I love it.
Or like send an animal your way so you know. That's happened to us. Or like, what?
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
That's so cool. That is so cool. And you can't make it up.
No.
No,
I could never
exactly.
make something up. It would never be that good.
Exactly.
It would never be that good.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No.
No one would want to hear those stories if I made them up.
Right.
So I have a question. When you're talking about doing group crossings, to me, that sounds like there's nobody who's paying you to do this. So you're just doing it on your own, or is that a false belief? Wow. So you're just a kind heart, just set the space and just work for God, right?
Yes. And yeah, I work for God. And when I get a message, they're like, okay, well, so I have like the angels built, I call it a stadium. And so if there are souls wanting to cross, they can go wait in that stadium until I do a crossing. So there is a place for them to go. They used to come in here all the time. And I'm like, no, I'm not working tonight. Come back, come back. And the angels like, we will build a stadium. And so they built a stadium, and now I can just send souls into the stadium. And it also works really well if I'm working on a one-on-one session with somebody or during the group. If there's a soul that comes in that hasn't crossed, or if I have to remove an entity from somewhere or something, I can send them to that stadium, and then I will cross them either after the group live when I have space open, either after a private session, or when I just have the time, right? So then I'll go do a group crossing, and it doesn't take that long for me anymore because the light that I'm able to harness is so powerful, and it starts working on them as soon as they walk into that stadium. So it starts healing them and kind of sifting that heaviness out of them.
So you say the light you're able to hold now, that means you've been able to track your journey of how much light you hold. You've seen it grown for yourself.
Oh, yes. And you can feel it. And when I used to do lives on Instagram, like you can see the difference when I was then and later now. It's not completely different, but it's so much more powerful.
Well, I think that is a great segue into this observation I've had this whole recording. So our videos, what we're seeing right now as we record, they're not full quality to begin with. It's recording at full quality. But I've noticed every time the three of us get excited about something or laugh, that's when like it glitches the most and pauses the most and gets the most distorted. And I'm like, obviously that's our energy just messing with the computers and the technology. So it's funny that happens.
Great? So. Well, we're probably pulling from it, right?
Yeah. Okay, so tell us briefly now exactly what you do, and then let's move into our soulful send-off.
Okay. So I am what I have been told from my divine counsel. I am a healer. And a lot of people say they're healers, which is wonderful. But for me, what that means and what I can do is the person that's in front of me, whatever they need to heal or to move forward, I'm going to be able to provide for them. Sometimes that means they need to connect with a loved one that has crossed over. I'll be able to connect those. And so they can get messages from the loved one. And with the beautiful light that I'm able to harness or facilitate from heaven, I can help you feel that person. I can help you have a conversation with that person while you're feeling them, right? If you're open to that. The light can only work as much as you're able to receive it. Like it's not going to go against your free will, right? So whatever you're able to receive, it's going to give you. Okay. And then sometimes that looks like, if you have migraines, like I'm going to be able to lessen those migraines and work on those parts of the brain or the parts of the pathogens that are causing those migraines, right? Now, a lot of time, if you've had these for decades, it's probably going to take like multiple sessions because it's so ingrained, deeply embedded, right? But if it's a new, fresh kind of injury or a fresh symptom, I can usually wipe those out pretty quickly. kind of like the bruises on my friend Karen, right? I could put my hand on there. They left, but it was the day after her accident. Okay. But if somebody like me, who I was born with shingles, right? Someone to come in and work on the shingles inside my body, that's going to take multiple sessions because it's just so ingrained and intertwined into my body.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect sense.
Totally.
Okay.
So at this point, let's move into our soulful send-off where we say something to the listeners from our hearts, from our souls, and you're welcome to jump in at any time. But I just want to reflect back to you, Robin, how brave you are from all the traumas you experienced at such a young age, coming into the world sick and being aware of, I'll just say, this stuff on the other side of the veil, and it being scary and hiding from it, and the journey to transmute that doesn't happen in a day, doesn't happen in a year, not even a couple of years. It's a lifetime, a lifelong journey, and you're doing it, you've done it, and look at you now. And now you are helping souls just in your own spare time. You're wanting to help the Ghostbuster people, like, do something from the heart and do something for these souls that they're detecting. And I'm just touched by your ability to transmute your own personal perspectives into much wider perspectives that you are now using to work for God. And I think that's very beautiful. So thank you for being here and telling your story with us.
Oh, you make me sound so nice. Thank you so much. Thank you for the invite. This is my first podcast, so I'm a little nervous.
Woohoo.
Yes.
Yeah.
You did great. And I just love your spirit. I think you are such an endearing person, and you just want to get the truth out there. You want us to know what you're seeing. And I feel like it gives us so much great information that we can use to help ourselves, help our loved ones, and be more of the light, knowing all this beautiful information that you brought forward today. So thank you so much for sharing your stories and what you experience and your journey with us, and how you're helping people is just so beautiful. So beautiful. And they're not even in their bodies, a lot of them. So we just want to say thank you to you for helping and being of the light.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
You have to take compliments sometimes, isn't it?
Yes.
Especially some wonderful ones. And I'm usually the one, like, handing them out and giving them, like, the divine messages. And so receiving can be difficult. So, but thank you. I appreciate that. Like, more than I know how to express. So I appreciate it. And thank you for the invite. I am new to the wonderful work that y'all are doing, and I look forward to learning more about it and more about y'all. And I just love your energies, both of you. I just love your energies. And spending more time in it is a goal of mine.
Well, we look forward to that. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Cool. So anyone wants to work with Robin, check her out, robincheyney.com.
Yes.
And thanks for listening to this episode.
Till next time. Bye. Visit us at aspenroots.love.